The silent ruler of our lives, it begins in the quiet of your own room. You sit there, staring at your phone. You told yourself just 5 minutes. But now, 2 hours have passed. Your tea is cold, the sun is set. And yet you keep scrolling. Don't even know what you're looking for anymore. But your brain knows. It's looking for that next hit, that invisible currency we all trade in now. Dopamine. Dopamine isn't evil. In fact, it's the reason your ancestors hunted, farmed, explored, and survived. It's the brain's go signal. A chemical whisper saying, yes, chase that. There's something good there. Without it, humanity would still be in caves. But here's the problem. We live in a world that figured out how to hijack it. Think of it like this. Centuries ago, the philosopher Epicurus spoke about pleasure. But he warned against the pleasure trap. Chasing constant stimulation instead of meaningful satisfaction. Fast forward to today, and we've built entire empires on that trap. Your phone? Dopamine dispenser. Social media? A slot machine in your pocket? Fast food? A lab-engineered burst of pleasure? Streaming platforms? It's an endless buffet for your attention. And it's not just tech. People use dopamine to escape. A man drowns himself in alcohol after losing his job, just to feel something other than shame. A woman can't stop online shopping, not because she needs things, but because that little red order confirmed. Email feels like a victory over boredom. A teenager posts picture after picture, not to express themselves, but to collect the currency of likes, hearts, and shares. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote about the last man, a being who avoids all struggle, lives only for comfort, and never risks pain. That's us. The dopamine era. Yes. We don't face lions anymore, but we run from silence, from boredom, from our own thoughts. Here's the dark truth. Dopamine doesn't care if you're happy. It only cares if you're chasing. That's why the high fades. That's why no amount is enough. Your brain keeps moving the goalpost. And in this chase, we've traded depth for speed. We no longer savor meals. We swallow them while watching TikTok. We don't fall in love slowly. We swipe right or left in seconds. We don't read whole books. We skim quotes on Instagram. Philosopher Søren Kierkegaard warned that the crowd will always pull you toward the easy, the shallow, the popular, and away from your true self. Today the crowd isn't on the streets. It's in your notifications. So how do you break free? Not by running away from dopamine entirely. You can't. You need it to live, to create, to dream. The secret is to reclaim it, to stop letting it own you and start making it serve you. Here's what that looks like. Delay the reward. Train your brain to wait. Instead of checking your phone the second it buzzes, give it 10 minutes. Make your mind hunger for the right things. Choose real over artificial. Conversations in person, not just messages. Cooking your own food, not just ordering. Working on a project you care about, not just liking someone else's. Embrace boredom. Let silence scare you until it no longer does. This is where deep ideas are born, not in a feed, but in stillness. Create more than you consume, right? Build, paint, start something that outlasts a single swipe. Remember what Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. He didn't have Instagram, but he knew the battle was always within. And maybe that's the most radical thing you can do in a dopamine-obsessed world. To feel joy not from endless novelty, but from building something so meaningful it's worth the wait. Imagine this. A year from now, you could look back and see that you didn't just exist. You created. You loved. You built a life where pleasure wasn't stolen from a screen, but earned from living. Dopamine won't disappear from your life. But if you master it, it will no longer be your master. So the question is, will you keep scrolling, chasing, distracting yourself into oblivion? Or will you step off the hamster wheel and start living on your own terms? This is not just brain chemistry. It's your life. And the clock is still ticking. The sweet poison dopamine is a liar. Whispers to you in the morning when you scroll through your phone before your feet even touch the floor. It promises you joy with every little notification, every like, every new message. But here's the truth. Dopamine doesn't care about your happiness. It only cares about your pursuit. It's not the finish line that excites it. It's the chase. Ancient philosophers didn't use the word dopamine, but they knew its shadow well. The Stoics warned about being enslaved to externals, pleasures outside our control. Epicurus, often misquoted as a hedonist, actually taught restraint, knowing that endless craving leads not to freedom, but to chains. Today, our chains are digital, invisible. We don't carry them in our hands. They live in our pockets. You check your phone 80 times a day, but tell yourself you're just checking the time. You binge watch, not because you're enjoying the story, but because your brain is terrified of boredom. Dopamine doesn't just lure us into obvious addictions, alcohol, drugs, gambling. It hides inside things society applauds: hustle culture, endless comparison, pursuit of likes and followers. The competition never ends. There's always someone richer, fitter, smarter, more successful. And so you keep running, thinking the finish line will bring peace, but it never does. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." The tragedy of today is that dopamine has replaced our why with an endless carousel of what is next. You're no longer living for purpose. You're living for the next hit. And here's the most dangerous part. The more dopamine you chase, the less joy you feel from it. But soon, you need more to feel the same, until one day you realize you're not even chasing pleasure anymore. You're just running from emptiness. In this war, the enemy isn't pleasure itself. It's the loss of control. And control is the first thing dopamine steals. There is a hunger in us that dopamine whispers to. It doesn't scream, it seduces. It tells you, just one more. One more scroll, one more drink, one more late night binge. And the lie it tells is that the next one more will finally be enough. A man who once dreamed of writing a book now spends his nights arguing with strangers online. A woman who once painted every morning now stares at a glowing screen until her eyes ache. We live in the richest age of information, yet we feel spiritually bankrupt. Dopamine was never meant to be our master. In ancient times, it drove the hunter to track the deer through the cold, or the mother to forage just one more berry to feed her child. It was survival. Now, that same ancient force is being hijacked. Corporations, algorithms, and attention merchants have weaponized it against us. They've learned the art of feeding you just enough pleasure to keep you starving. Here's the provocation. We call it addiction when it's heroin. We call it normal life when it's Instagram. But look around you. The addiction is everywhere, and it's disguised as entertainment, as productivity, even as friendship. But it is hollow. You can fill your brain with constant hits of dopamine and still feel the deep ache of meaninglessness. The darkest part, you will think it's your fault, that you are weak, that you lack discipline, when in truth, you are being played. The path to mastery there is a way out. But it is not the easy way. Dopamine is not evil. It is power. Power is never destroyed. It is directed. The path to mastery is the path of turning your dopamine from a prison warden into a loyal servant. That means rewiring your brain so that the rush, the excitement, the I need to do more feeling is attached not to distractions, but to creation. The ancient Stoics spoke of self-command. Marcus Aurelius, in the midst of war and chaos, wrote in his diary, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The samurai of Japan called it shugo, austere training, not just of the body but of the spirit. They learned to crave the swing of the sword, the discipline of practice, the stillness of meditation. Their dopamine was hooked on mastery, not mediocrity. You can do the same. But first, you must starve the parasite. It means withdrawing the constant cheap hits, the endless scrolling, the background noise of shallow pleasures. Yes, it will hurt. Your brain will rebel. You will feel restless, even anxious. That's the detox. Then, you'll feed it something real. You'll pick the thing you once dreamed of doing. Learning a skill. It's building something, creating art, mastering your craft. And you train your brain to want that. You make progress visible. You celebrate small wins. You wired dopamine to serve your long-term vision instead of destroying it. And here's the truth nobody wants to hear. Mastery is not a mood. It's not a vibe. It's a war. A war against your own laziness, against the invisible algorithms, against the easy pleasures that steal your potential. But when you win that war, the same chemical that kept you scrolling will keep you rising. And that's when dopamine stops being your prison. It becomes your wings. The quiet revolution. There's a moment in every person's life when the noise becomes too loud. The notifications, the constant scrolling, the unending stream of videos, likes, and must-see moments. It all starts to feel like a wave you can't outrun. Some drown, others learn to swim differently. The quiet revolution begins the day you realize that dopamine is not your enemy, it's your compass. The problem isn't the chemical, it's how the world has weaponized it against you. They have learned to farm your attention like crops, to harvest your focus until there's nothing left for your own dreams. But here's the truth they don't want you to know. Dopamine was designed to serve you, to guide you toward building, creating, loving, exploring, not just consuming. Think of the great artists, the inventors, the philosophers who lived before the age of instant gratification. They had the same brain chemistry as you. The difference? Their dopamine came from long hours of work, from the quiet satisfaction of mastery. From the slow burn of chasing a dream instead of chasing a feed. You can reclaim that. Start small, train your mind like a warrior refusing to hand over his sword. Delay the reward. Pick one thing worth working on, and let that be the source of your dopamine. Skill, a business, a body transformation, a piece of art. Something that will outlast the endless scroll of other people's lives. Because one day, you will wake up and realize you're not competing for likes anymore. You're recompeting with your old self. And when that happens, when the chase becomes about becoming you, the addiction to the trivial will crumble on its own. The quiet revolution isn't loud. It's not trending. It happens in the silence of your own mind, every time you choose growth over distraction. And when enough of us choose, the world will no longer own our dopamine. We will. Beyond the noise, there comes a moment in every life when the music stops. When the dopamine rush is gone, when your phone is silent, the party is over, the applause fades, and you're left staring at yourself in the mirror. This is the moment most people fear. The silence, the stillness, the void. We've built a world where constant stimulation feels like survival. We check our phones at red lights, scroll when we're in bed, put on music when we're in the shower, not because we want to, because we can't stand to be alone with our thoughts. And here's the hard truth. Dopamine has become our prison warden. And the bars are made of notifications, trends, and endless little hits of pleasure. Philosophers once warned of this in different words. Nietzsche called it herd mentality, the fear of facing the self, so we drown ourselves in the comfort of the crowd. Seneca warned that the man who cannot be alone is a man who has never met himself. And today, we've taken their fears and put them on steroids. Look around. People can't go for a walk without music in their ears. They can't sit in a cafe without opening their phone. They can't work without checking every 10 minutes if someone liked their post. And you might think, so what? It's just modern life. But here's the dangerous part. When the noise never stops, we never hear the whispers that guide us to greatness. That small voice that says, write the book, start the business, move to that city, learn that skill. That voice is fragile. It doesn't shout. It waits for you to be still. In today's world, most people never are. The path beyond the noise is brutal. You will be bored. You will be restless. Your brain will scream for the easy hit. But the moment you push through, that's where clarity lives. That's where deep work happens. That's where you stop being a passenger in your own life and start taking the wheel. Dopamine is not the enemy, but without discipline, it becomes the master. And if you don't take control, your life will be nothing but a series of distractions between birth and death. The choice is simple but terrifying. Live for the next hit. Or build something so meaningful that no rush can compare. Freedom beyond the chemical, there comes a point when you realize something that shakes you to your core. Most of the things you've been chasing were never yours. They were rented from dopamine, and the rent was your peace of mind. This is where liberation begins, not in giving up pleasure, but in no longer being owned by it. You start small. You wake up one morning and leave your phone in another room. You feel the itch, the nervous pull, that invisible leash. but you resist. You drink your coffee without scrolling, without checking who liked your last post. For a moment, the world feels slower, and that slowness is not emptiness. It's space. Space for thought, space for self. You learn to swap cheap highs for deep joys. A walk under the dying orange sky becomes more satisfying than 100 notifications. A conversation with someone who truly listens feels richer than any binge-watched show. The philosopher Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Dopamine's tyranny is time theft. And UVA decided to be a thief no more. You will still feel temptation. The world will still wave its bright hooks in front of you. Money, likes, competition, approval. But now, you see them for what they are, painted lures on an empty hook. Freedom beyond the chemical isn't about rejecting pleasure. It's about reclaiming choice. You are no longer a slave to the next rush, the next escape, the next digital applause. You can walk into pleasure and walk out without it dragging you by the neck. And when you do, life changes. You're not constantly reaching your living. You not desperately filling a void. You found that the void was never real. The most dangerous prison is the one you can't see, and the sweetest victory is walking out of it, keys in your hand. The rebirth, it always starts small. A spark, a flicker of realization that maybe, just maybe, the life you've been living isn't the only life you can live. This is where the journey changes. Not with a grand announcement to the world, not with fireworks, but in silence. The moment you realize you've been outsourcing your happiness to likes, screens, alcohol, games, gossip, validation, and you whisper to yourself, "No more." The rebirth begins in withdrawal, not withdrawal from life, but from the noise that was stealing it. You'll feel it. The restlessness, the itch in your fingertips, the phantom urge to check your phone, the quiet scream in your mind when you sit alone in an empty room. That's not boredom. That's the sound of your brain recalibrating. That's dopamine's grip loosening. For the first time in years, you might hear your own thoughts without background music. You might notice the taste of your morning tea. You might actually look at someone in the eye when they speak, instead of glancing at the blue glow of your screen. And in those moments, something ancient stirs inside you. The philosophers called it eudaimonia, the deep, unshakable sense of living in alignment with your highest self. You remember what it feels like to want less, and yet feel more? Your self-worth is no longer a reflection of what the world thinks, but of the work you do when no one is watching. This isn't easy. Dopamine detox isn't a cute weekend challenge. It's a war. Every app on your phone, every flashing billboard, every carefully engineered notification, they are soldiers in an army fighting for your attention. But here's the truth. If you win this war, you don't just get your focus back. You get yourself back. You begin to crave effort again. You find pleasure in the sweat dripping down your face after a workout. You smile at the sting of early mornings because they now hold purpose. You're right. You build. You create. Not for approval, but because you finally feel alive without it. The rebirth isn't about becoming someone new. It's about returning to the person you were before the world told you what to want. And when you stand in that place, clear-eyed, present, unshaken, you will look back at the life you once lived and you will realize it wasn't the dopamine that was the problem. It was the cage you built around it. Now the door is open. The choice is yours. Will you step out?